Welcome back. I'm the Taoist Psychic, and this is the 5th video in my complete psychic development series. In my last video, we talked about the most common psychic ability, which is clairsentience, and that is psychic feeling. We practiced sensing metaphysical energy with our metaphysical body, and hopefully you had a chance to go through your house and feel the different energies of different objects and maybe your pets, appliances, to see what, if anything, you felt. And hopefully while you were doing that, you were paying a little bit of attention to the thoughts and different images and things that were popping into your mind. And that's what we're going to talk about today. For this video, you are going to need some materials. You're going to need either your tarot or oracle cards, a deck of playing cards if you have them, or really any type of cards, Go Fish cards, doesn't really matter. You're also going to want something to write with. If you don't have any cards, if you are adverse to buying some or you just don't feel comfortable using them, some people don't, you can make some cards yourself, and you can use just some blank note cards or some pieces of paper and draw little pictures on them. I can show you in a little bit how to do that and how you can use those in lieu of tarot cards. Clairvoyance is psychic sight, and it mainly takes place in your third eye chakra. Now, some psychics do see things psychically with their physical eyes, but the vast majority see things in their mind's eye, and that's what we're going to be practicing today. Now, it's totally worthwhile to try to practice, seeing auras and trying to see spirits with your physical eyes, but it's not necessary to be clairvoyant. With the exception of people who were born blind, everybody is clairvoyant. Everybody has psychic images popping into their mind throughout the course of the day. You probably have thousands, if not more. The problem is that there's so much else going on up there that most people don't recognize the conscious thoughts from the psychic ones. So, as with any psychic ability, the trick to developing clairvoyance is to just draw your attention to the ability itself, and then try to filter out the nonsense from the important information. And the next exercise we're going to do, I'm just going to warn you right now, it's not an easy exercise. But I want to, and I usually do, try to give you a difficult assignment first. Because if you can do this with any amount of success, you're going to have the easiest time with all other methods. So we're going to do the hardest one first and then go from there. You can create your own tarot or oracle cards simply by taking some blank pieces of paper and just drawing little pictures on there. Now, you want to go ahead and use whatever colors you have available. You can use symbols, numbers, words. I have a few different scenes in here, and I also have a few different pictures here. We have something happy with different words written on here, and you can kind of take away from these stick figures maybe what they have going on in their little scene. I also threw in a sad picture too, just to kind of give you an idea. Now, technically, you can use cards like this that you make yourself for any type of reading. They're just as good, if not better, than buying a deck of cards. But if you're uncomfortable, this is definitely the way to go. If you're not the best artist, don't worry. Just do whatever comes naturally to you, even if you just make little stick figures, and you should be able to get just as much out of them as you would a store-bought deck. Go ahead and get your tarot or oracle cards. You want to make sure that they're good and shuffled. For this exercise, I personally will be using a Russian version of the Osho Zen deck, and the reason why I have this is because I don't speak very good Russian, so it gives me an opportunity to kind of fly blind here and have to really, I don't necessarily know what the words mean or what the symbolism is, so I can't rely on that specifically, and this deck is relatively new to me. So I'm in a similar position that you are, and I'm shuffling over here, as you can tell. These questions are going to be things you ask yourself about the card on the top. Well, you can pick a card from any part of the deck if you want, but mainly we're going to ask specific questions such as, what are the dominant colors on the other side of the card? Are there any shapes or patterns that stick out in your mind? Do you see any people, any animals? Do you see a male or female figure? Can you pick out any buildings or structures? Are there any actions that you see taking place? How about any words? Some cards have words written on them, and do you see anything like that? Or do you see any words in your mind's eye that might have something to do with the card and the picture itself? And is there anything else that you see on the card or that keeps popping up in front of your mind? When you ask yourself these questions, make sure that you try to relax. Again, this is an extremely difficult exercise. If you're familiar with Zener cards, which are used to, for some reason, to evaluate how clairvoyant somebody is, this is a similar exercise, but it's much easier than that. The reason why Zener cards and this exercise are so difficult is because you're reading an inanimate object. It's completely different when you use your clairvoyance to try to read yourself, read a situation, or read another person. But again, we want to do something very difficult now, because if you can get anything out of this, everything else is going to be very, very easy for you. Try to remember that the goal is not necessarily to get the information right. If you don't see exactly what's on the other side of the card, that's fine. But even if you get anything, if you can pick out a color, a shape, an item, something to that effect, you have to try to go back and figure out what that process was inside your mind that allowed you to get that information. And it's not easy. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your card and you are going to ask yourself these questions. Make sure you take a few deep breaths first. Now I'm going to hold up the card. I can't look at it because then I will be able to see what it is too. I see the color, I get like a dark green that kind of comes forward. I also, it has like a nighttime scene, I believe. And I also, when I ask myself whether or not there's a person on the other side of this card, I believe there is, but I can't get as far as if it's a male or female. I can't tell. And I also see the word, when I ask myself, you know, what do I see any words on here? I see the word soft. Now I don't know if that word is written on there, or the translation from the Russian word that's written on here, if that's what it means, or if soft is something to do with the card itself, the picture on the card. Alright, so I'm going to look. As you already know, I was able to pick out the greens in the card, and the person in the center, I'm not surprised I didn't get too much from the person. It looks like a little kid on here. Now, as far as the word soft, the only thing I can think of, because what word do we have on there? That's not the Russian word for soft. Maybe because it's a child looking at a rainbow, maybe has like a softer feel to it visually, I guess you could say. So that's what you want to do with your cards. And again, if you're having a hard time, first of all, just take a step back and don't force it, okay? Getting frustrated is only going to hurt your cause. Make sure that you're calm, relaxed, you've had enough sleep, you didn't just eat, and just do a few of these, okay? If you keep trying to force yourself, and the longer you do this, the harder it becomes, because your mind just starts getting flooded with conscious thoughts. For your assignment, I want you to do this exact exercise. If you need to take a break first, that's fine. But at some point before you do the next video, I want you to do the same exercise, but this time I want you to integrate your clairsentience into the mix. And you might be asking yourself, how am I supposed to feel something if I can't use my metaphysical body, if I'm just trying to feel an image? Well, you can physically try to feel the card and see what you can pull from it, or you can ask yourself, how do you feel about the card? And questions that I normally like to ask myself when I'm trying to get details include, is this a happy card, sad? Do I feel neutral about it? Is there a lot of chaos here? A lot going on? Does it feel very busy? What about, the tone of the card. What is the card all about? What's the theme? Is it more receptive? Is it is there a sense of confidence and stillness, or is it just a big mess? And depending on your cards, you might have some like that. This is why you want to use oracle or tarot cards, because they have a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of different meanings behind everything. I'd love to hear about your experiences. Please tell me what you thought of the exercise. Did you have a hard time? Did you find it easy? Were images coming to you left and right and you just didn't know how to even slow the psychic information down? If you had a hard time, let me know why. I might be able to give you some pointers. And clairvoyance doesn't come easily for everyone. Every psychic has kind of a mix of what abilities come more naturally to them. And so this is just a part of you trying to figure out what works best for you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And don't forget, you can check out my website. I have a lot of good information there about psychic development and a lot of other stuff too. You can also follow me on social media. All of those links will be in the description. And I will see you next time.